Chapter 4. It was very dark and very quiet. The excitement was the thing that told the boys it was morning. They woke up together, both pushed up by it. "Is she still asleep?" "No, she isn't," said their mother. "She's starving." They climbed down out of their huge bunk bed and got in under their mother's duvet. "That was the best night's sleep I ever had in my life," she said. "So what?" said Johnny. She tickled him out of the bed, and Tom followed him onto the floor. They got dressed quickly. "Don't forget to put on your thermals," said Sandra. "Ah, yes," said Tom. "Our toasty thermals." "Our underground knickers," said Johnny. They were dressed and ready to go. "Can we go without you?" said Tom. She always took ages to get ready, even when she was in a hurry. "Sure," she said. "I'll be right behind you." It was very quiet out in the corridor. They walked and skidded on down to the foyer place. They could smell food they thought they'd like, and then they were at the dining room. It was full of quiet people, and they both noticed it at the same time. No kids. At all. There were no children. Just Johnny and Tom. Some people looked over at them. Some smiled. Some didn't. "All grown-ups," said Tom. "I'm hungry," said Johnny. It was one of those places where you served yourself. There was a counter with cooked stuff, eggs, sausages, toast, and a table with cereal and fruit and things of yogurt. Johnny went to the table. There was a huge glass bowl full of muesli. "Is that all?" But then he saw the little boxes. Cornflakes, Rice Krispies, and one he didn't know but was covered in chocolate. He looked out to the foyer. No sign of their mother. They grabbed a box of the chocolate cereal each, and a bowl and a spoon. There was no empty table. They had to sit beside a man and a woman who looked way too old to be messing around with dogs and snow. "Hello," said the man. He smiled. There was a reindeer on the woman's jumper. "Hello," said Tom. "English?" said the man. "No," said Tom. "Irish," said Johnny. "Ah," said the man. He had said something to the woman. She nodded. The man pointed at himself and then at the woman. "Belgium." "Brussels," said Tom. "No," said the man. Tom looked at Johnny. "Brussels is in Belgium," he said. "It's the capital city of it." "He's not from Brussels," said Johnny. "I never said he was," said Tom. "I only told him Brussels is in Belgium. Do you not think he knows that already?" "Shut up." "Muppet." "Thick." "Muppet." The man smiled. The boys opened the cereal boxes and dumped the chocolate stuff into their bowls. "Cool. They're shaped like dogs." "They're not." "They are. Look. That's not a dog." "It is. That's his tail. Look." "Shut up and just eat it." By the time their mother got there, Johnny and Tom had eaten the cereal, and they'd thrown the evidence, the empty boxes, into the bin. They'd filled their plates up with cooked stuff, and they were just starting to eat it. "Looks good," she said. Johnny's mouth was full of sausage that didn't taste as he'd expected, and he didn't know if he liked it or not. His mother was staring at his mouth. He swallowed the meat. "Is that chocolate I see on your lips?" she said. "No," said Johnny. Tom quickly wiped his mouth. The no chocolate rule was stupid. It made no sense. She let them eat everything else. She was looking at his mouth now. He could feel himself going red. Then a man came in right behind their mother. "Hello," he shouted. "People?" He was dressed in black. He had a black fleece and big black padded trousers. His hair was white, and he had a beard with a point on it, done in little braids, like the back of a girl's hair, and a red and black striped cap, with bits for the ears tied up. He was young for a man, and he looked nice. "Good morning, people," he said. "Everybody speaks English, yeah?" Tom and Johnny looked around. Some of the adults nodded, and 2 of them said yes out loud. 3 of them looked down at their tables. "Cool," said the man. "So, my name is Aki. Spells A-K-I, I guess. Finnish name, yeah? Aki. I am your guide." "Ah," said the man who wasn't from Brussels. Other people nodded. "And we will go now, to get the suits and boots, and then we will meet the dogs." "We met them already," said Tom. "And good," said Aki. "You are Thomas, or John?" "Tom," said Tom. "Awesome," said Aki. "And you are John?" "Yeah," said Johnny. "Also awesome," said Aki. "And so—" He turned. They followed. Sandra grabbed some toast and a sausage, and they all followed Aki out of the hotel. It was cold. "Yum," said Sandra. "The sausage is nice." "The meat of the deer is in the sausage," said the man from Belgium. "Oh, Jesus," said Sandra. "Poor Bambi." It was still dark. It was lovely, a silvery grey colour. She slid on ice, but didn't fall. She'd forgotten her gloves. Her hands were already hurting, only a few seconds after coming outside. She pushed them into her pockets. That made walking on the ice more difficult. So she just took them out again. She could balance better now. They weren't going far, just across the yard and down an icy hill, to a big red-painted shed. She looked at her watch. It was nearly 9:30. She'd have been at work by now. She looked at the boys. They were like two rabbits in front of her, bobbing along. She could see the excitement in their bodies. They were keeping up with Aki, chatting away, probably driving him mad with questions. She wondered how Frank was getting on, and Grania. She was glad she was here just for a while, just herself and the boys, away from the complications, fresh air and deer meat. Things were nice and simple here. She was sure they were fine, Frank and Grania. And the mother? The ex-wife? Rosemary. What about her? It was sudden, a shock. She slid and fell backwards, but her head landed on the man from Belgium's boots. She was okay. Hans helped her up. She was okay, a bit embarrassed. "You are fine?" "Yes," she said. "I'm grand. I'm fine, thanks." Someone else behind her slipped, and she felt less embarrassed and hot. She heard laughter, foreign voices. She'd like this, the adventure. She was fine. She walked on. A few minutes later they all stood in the yard and looked huge. They were dressed in big red suits that made them all look a bit like astronauts. They had scarves and gloves, either red ones made from the same stuff as the suits, or caps and gloves of their own. There was lots of laughing and backslapping. Aki gave them time to take photographs of one another. "Stand still a minute, lads," said Sandra. But they didn't. Running properly wasn't easy because the suits were so fat and stiff. But the boys were able to run slowly, and they ran straight into each other and bounced. They were padded, and it didn't hurt. Not when they whacked into each other, not even when they landed on the hard snow. They made the noise. "Ouch! Ouch! Agony!" But they were fine. They got up to do it again, but then they heard the dogs, and that was more important. And Aki thought so too. "And so," he said, "we go." The big red people turned and followed Aki. Tom and Johnny knew the way, and they rushed and skidded ahead of him. They blew steam that came from their mouths straight into each other's faces. "Killer steam! Die, small boy!" They were at the dogs again, in among the kennels and the smell. The dogs were excited, and none of them were standing on the kennel roofs. They knew they were going out. Tom and Johnny could tell. "So, the husky dogs, I guess," said Aki. "And hey, I think they like you." He was talking to Johnny and Tom, and they were delighted. They looked at their mother. She was smiling at them. "So," said Aki, "people." He waited for the last of the adults to arrive. The man who wasn't from Brussels had stood on poo, and was trying to rub it off on the snow. And that was stupid, because the snow was full of it already. "So," said Aki again, "these are your huskies. For 4 days, I guess." Johnny decided. Aki was good at his job. He was scaring them a bit, but he was making them much more excited, the way he shouted some words and whispered others. "Look at the eyes," said Aki. "Awesome!" and the adults who hadn't noticed now. "Oh, look, lads, they're gorgeous," said their mother. "Very beautiful," said the not from Brussels man. "You agree?" he asked Johnny. Johnny nodded. He didn't want to be rude, but he'd seen the eyes already, and he just wanted to go. "Too beautiful, I think," said the woman from Belgium. "I know what you mean," said their mother. "You could never trust a fellow with eyes like those." What was she on about now? What would a fellow be doing with dog's eyes? But Aki finished the eye time. "So," he said, "how will these dogs bring us on the safari?" No one answered. None of the adults wanted to be wrong, even though the answer was easy. "On the backs?" Some of the adults laughed. "No," said Tom. "With saddles?" "I said no," said Tom. "Right," said Aki. "I am being a dumbass. Yeah?" "Yeah," said Tom. "Tom?" said his mother. "Sorry," said Tom. "For sure," said Aki. "So, how?" He was looking at Tom. "Sleigh," said Johnny. "Me?" said Tom. "Sledge." "Right and right," said Aki. "Sleigh and sledge." "There's a difference?" "No." "Oh." "Or sled," said Aki. "3 words for one thing. Choose." He pointed at Tom, then Johnny. "Sled," they said together. "Good choice," said Aki. "Cool. How many dogs?" "What do you mean?" said Johnny. "To pull the sleigh and sledge and sled. Each. How many dogs?" "4." "Right," said Aki. "So." Tom and Johnny saw the panic on the adult faces. Their brains were catching up. 4 mad dogs to master and control. 4 dogs to mush mush. 4 dogs to point in the right direction and hope they would go that way. "So," said Aki. "This way." He walked across to the nearest sled. They all followed him. No one was laughing now. No one was talking. They stopped when he stopped. "Come," he said. They gathered around the sled. There were no dogs attached to it yet. It was a very simple thing, made mostly from wood that looked like very thick, shiny string. There were 2 runners, parallel at the bottom, with a thin plate made of metal on each runner, to stand on. There was a bar across the back of the sled, just over the runners. Aki stood on the runners. "See?" He put a foot down on the bar, and they heard it scrape the ice. Aki got off the sled and picked it up. Beneath the bar they saw a jagged line of steel, like serious teeth, or a bear trap. "The brake," he said. "Cool," said Johnny. "Right," said Aki. He dropped the sled and stood on it again. He put his foot on the bar, and the steel teeth bit into the ice. "Doesn't work so well in ice, I guess," he said. "But in snow, put your foot down, the sleigh or sled will stop. I promise this, no problems." He picked up the sled with one hand. "Not heavy." He put it down again. "And the reins?" said the man from Belgium. "What say?" said Aki. The man pretended he was riding a horse. He even clicked with his mouth. "No reins," said Aki. "How will the dogs know?" said the man. "Know what?" "To go," said the man. "They will know," said Aki. He looked at all of them. "And you must also know," he said. He held the handles. "Hands here, feet here, no problem." Johnny looked at all the adult faces. "But," the faces said. "Who, me?" they said. "I wish I was in Spain," the faces said. But no one spoke. It was up to Johnny and Tom. "How do we make them go?" said Johnny. "You do not make them go." "Tom?" "Johnny." "Right. You and Tom." "Yeah." "You are very young, I guess," said Aki. You will go with Callie." "Who's that?" said Johnny. The Belgian man tapped Johnny on the shoulder. "This is him, I think." And then they saw him. No one spoke. Callie was the man Johnny and Tom had met the day before. He was still very tall and very wide, and he still had the knife on his belt. "So, good morning, Callie," said Aki. Callie didn't answer, but he nodded at Aki. He walked past all the adults to the dogs. He still wasn't wearing a hat. "So, this is Callie," said Aki. "Callie is the dog man." "He owns them?" "Right." He pointed at Callie. Callie was collecting strips of leather, pulling the strips, making sure they wouldn't snap. Tom had seen the leather strips the day before. They were the things that held the huskies to the sleds. "Callie is how you get your dogs to go," said Aki. "The dogs will follow Callie." He smiled. 4 dogs for each. He patted the Belgian man's stomach as he passed him. 5 for you, perhaps, he said. The Belgian man laughed, but his wife or girlfriend looked annoyed. Aki winked at Johnny and Tom. "Come," he said. He showed them how to get the harness over a dog's head. He let them do it, and the dogs let them do it. The dogs licked their hands as they put the leather straps over their ears. It was easy. They looked around. They were way ahead of the adults. Some of them stood there, holding the harnesses, as if they were going to put them over their own heads. Their mother couldn't decide which end of the harness to start with. The dogs licking their hands was a sign of friendliness, Aki told them. "And," he said, "when the dog puts your hand in the mouth, it's cool. He likes you." "Just as well," said Johnny. "Look." The husky had Johnny's gloved hand in his mouth. Johnny could feel the teeth through the cloth, but the dog wasn't pressing them into his hand. Tom put his hand in front of the dog's mouth, and the dog took it. "How do you do?" he said. He patted the dog's head. The ears sprang back up. They were like little triangles stuck on top of its head. He did it again. The ears sprang up again. The harness went around the dog's mouth, across the snout. The dogs let it happen. They didn't pull back or snarl. Tom's dog even pushed his head forward to help him get the harness on. Aki bent down and helped him tighten the strap a bit, so the harness wouldn't slip over the boy's head. Tom looked around again. The woman from Belgium was sitting down. Her reindeer hat was in a dog's mouth. She was laughing. His mother had her arm around her dog's neck. She was laughing too, but she was grunting a bit as well. "So," said Aki. Everybody looked. Some of the dogs looked. The big man was standing beside Aki. Aki looked small beside him. "Callie wears a hat only when the temperature goes under -30, said Aki. Tom and Johnny heard gasps. "If Callie wears a hat, it is very cold. You need 2 hats. Callie hadn't budged since Aki had started talking. Johnny wondered if he could understand what Aki was saying. "Callie shows you how to hitch the husky dog to the sleigh or sled." And, before Aki had finished speaking, Callie grabbed the collar of Johnny's dog and pulled the dog over to the sled. The dog didn't object or pull back. He went side by side with Callie. Callie picked up a leather strap. It was long and attached to the front of Callie's sled. The sled was bigger and longer than the others. It would have 8 dogs to pull it. Callie brought this dog to the front of the long strap. Then he clipped 2 side straps to the dog, to the collar, and to the harness. He grabbed another dog and let him, or her, Tom wasn't sure if it was a boy or a girl, and put him beside the first, on the other side of the long strap. Aki pointed at the first dog. "This dog," he said. He patted the dog. "This husky dog is the lead dog," said Aki. "He leads, I guess. He is the boss of the husky dogs, and Callie is the boss of him. He goes where Callie wants him to go. The other husky dogs follow him." Aki brought up his hands and moved them, as if he was flicking reins. "So," he said, "no reins, yeah? The husky dogs will follow this one, even if you hold reins and go mush-mush." "What's his name?" said Tom. Callie spoke for the first time that morning. Rock, he said. It was the perfect name. Even the adults thought so. They looked less worried. The man from Belgium nodded. A good name, he said. Yeah, said Johnny. A good dog. Tom liked the dogs' tails. They were bushy and curved over their backs. It was the tails that told Tom the dogs were happy and excited. They knew they were going for a run. Gradually all the dogs were hitched to the sleds. It took a while with their mother. One of her dogs was a messer. Ah, said Hacky, the famous Hastro. He grabbed the dog to help their mother. The dog had 2 different coloured eyes, a brown and a blue. Why is he famous? Said Aki. He is not famous. But he wants to be, I guess. He patted the dog. Is that right, Hastro? He backed the dog into place and hooked the strap to his harness. Then he stood up straight and stepped back. Hastro thinks he is the lead dog, he said. Oh, God, said their mother. One of those. Can I not just have a harmless Egypt? Aki laughed. Egypt? He said. What is Egypt? Johnny pointed at Tom. Him, he said. He's an Egypt. Tom hated that. He hated when his brother stopped being his best friend and became nasty. He hated when it happened. He never saw it coming. He blinked back the tears. Johnny, said his mother. Sorry, said Johnny. To Tom, said his mother. She put her arms around both boys. Sorry, said Johnny. Tom nodded. He wasn't going to cry now. Did tears freeze? He wouldn't find out. Their mother held them for a bit longer, until she felt them getting restless. They were fine again. She let them go. They walked over to Callie's sled. They didn't look back at their mother. The adults stood on the sleds. They stood on the brakes at the back. There were 4 dogs for each sled, 2 on each side of the long strap. Some of the dogs pulled a bit, but not too hard. They wanted to go. They wanted to run. The boys looked around. Their mother waved at them. She looked a bit nervous, taking her hand off the sled. Aki stood near the boys. Why can't we have a sled of our own? Said Johnny. Each? Said Tom. Guys, said Aki, you are too young. That's stupid, said Tom. Everyone always says that, said Johnny. Is being young a criminal offence or something? I explain, said Aki. You are not too young, okay, but too light. Not enough of the kilos on the brake, yeah? He stamped his foot. The brake doesn't work. The husky dogs bring you to Russia. He pointed. East, he said. Not good. I thought they all followed Rock, said Johnny. Yes, said Aki. But you need the kilos for the brake. Guys, I'm sorry. They were annoyed and disappointed, but they knew he was right. He was being honest. They both liked him. Where's your sled? Said Tom. There is no sleigh or sled for Aki, said Aki. I travel in style. He pointed at a snowmobile. Why? Said Tom. Aki waved one of his hands left to right and back. I go forward and backward. People fall off the sleigh or sled. I pick them up. I reunite them with the sleigh or sled. I go ahead and make the fire for the coffee. What coffee? There is no husky safari without coffee, said Aki. That's stupid, said Tom. Aki lifted his hands. Guys, he said, it is my job. People like the coffee in the wilderness. They liked the sound of that word, wilderness. They looked at each other and grinned. Callie stood beside his sled. He didn't need to stand on his brake. His dogs wouldn't run away. Tom and Johnny went over to him. They were to sit beside each other, in front of Callie, in a narrow hollow. They climbed in. They sat back. They were nearly lying down. Move over, said Johnny. Move over yourself, said Tom. They pushed each other. Lads, they heard their mother, behave yourselves. He started it, said Tom. Johnny pinched him, but Tom hardly felt it because of all his padding. But he thumped Johnny, and Johnny thumped Tom. It could have gone on like that forever. if Callie hadn't stopped it. It could have gone on like that forever if Callie hadn't stopped it. They saw Callie's face coming closer to them. They stayed absolutely still as the face came out from high above them. They saw the black stubble on his chin. They saw one big black hair sticking out of his nostril. They saw the nose that looked hard enough to batter his way through the solid rock. They saw his eyes. Callie stared at them for a long time. No one was talking. No dogs were whimpering. The wind wasn't shaking the trees. Callie spoke. "Your country?" he said. "Ireland," said Johnny. "In Ireland?" said Callie. "Children obey the mothers." "Yes." "Yes," said Johnny. "Yes," said Tom. "Yes," said Callie. His face rose over them. They could see the trees again, and they heard people move and cough. Callie was standing up again. He held a blanket as thick as a rug. He flapped it, and it dropped gently on to Johnny and Tom. Callie was bending again as he tucked the blanket around the boys. They didn't want it. They weren't in a hospital or something, but they didn't say anything. "Thanks," said Johnny, when Callie was finished. Callie didn't answer. "So," said Aki, "we go." Suddenly Johnny and Tom were moving fast. They started laughing. They were gliding over the snow behind 8 dogs. The dogs went straight for the gate, out the gate, and they saw more snow than they'd ever seen before, more snow than they'd ever even imagined. Johnny had to do it. He couldn't stop. He had to shout. It was so exciting. "Wilderness!" And Tom joined in, like an echo. "Wilderness!" The airport. People were pouring out now. She saw women and men shake hands or hug. A woman stopped in front of her. She looked uncertain and unhappy. She took a piece of paper from her pocket. She looked at it. She looked around, at all the faces around her. She moved a bit. She dragged the luggage trolley with her. She looked round again. She began to look angry. It wasn't her mother. Too young, she looked. Too angry. Grania was scared she'd miss her, that she'd missed her already, that she'd gone past Grania while Grania was looking the wrong way. She looked behind her. There were more people waiting. Most of them were like her, waiting for someone off a plane. But there were others leaning on trolleys, sitting on bags, standing, waiting to be met or recognised. They were talking into mobile phones and texting. They were tired and pale, and some of them were nearly crying. She turned and saw more people pour into the arrivals hall. A man and woman in wheelchairs were met, and quickly surrounded by a gang of people. They laughed and shouted. They annoyed her. They got in the way. They were too happy, and she couldn't see round them, or over their heads. She was afraid she'd miss her mother. There were too many people to stare at. They wouldn't move slowly. It was too confusing. "Grania?" Grania stood there. "Is it Grania?" "Yes," said Grania. "Hello." The woman who stood there was her mother. The woman who stood there was her mother. She was the woman in the photograph. Her eyes, and the way her hair was on her forehead. She was the same. Grania didn't know what to do. She'd expected to feel suddenly full, lost time charging back into her. She didn't know. She'd expected it to feel right, but now she felt nothing. It was like there was a wall in the way. Waiting had been much easier. She wanted to run away. She didn't. She did. She just didn't know. She didn't run. "Hi," she said. "It's... Gosh," said the woman. "It's so great to see you, and thanks for meeting me." What did she mean? Why wouldn't Grania have met her? Maybe her mother saw the questions race over Grania's face. "Here," she explained. "Thanks for meeting me here. The first person I meet when I come home. You. It's..." She laughed. But it wasn't a real laugh. "It's perfect," she said. "Sorry," she said. "I'll shut up. I told myself not to talk too much." She'd never heard this woman's voice before. It wasn't in Grania's memory. Nothing clicked or came back. She'd looked nice in the photograph. She looked nice here too. "I like your bag," said her mother. Grania looked at her bag. It was just a bag, plain and black, like a sack. She shrugged. "It's a bit like mine," said her mother. But she didn't have a bag. She had cases and stuff piled on a trolley. It was hard to tell if she'd come home for good, or just for a visit. Grania couldn't see a shoulder bag. "I mean," said her mother, "I have one a bit like yours." "Oh," said Grania. "Cool." "It's in the mess, somewhere," said her mother. She smiled again. "It's quite crowded here," she said. "Will we go somewhere?" "Are you not staying with Granny?" "Yes," said her mother. "I mean before that. We could go somewhere, for breakfast. Just the two of us." "Okay," said Grania. "Where?" said her mother. "It's been years. I don't remember anywhere nice in Dublin." Grania didn't like choosing. She was no good at it. She didn't know nice places. "I know," said her mother. "We'll take a cab to your granny's, and I'll leave the bags there. And then we can go somewhere. For breakfast. Sound good?" She sounded American. Just a little bit. "Sound good?" Grania liked it, and she didn't. It made her mother even more foreign. "Okay," said Grania. "Grand," said her mother, and that sounded Irish. She started to push her trolley. Then she stopped. "Do you want to call me Rosemary?" she said. "You probably don't want to call me—" She laughed again, that nervous laugh. "What did I call you?" said Grania. "What?" "What did I call you?" said Grania. "I don't remember." She watched her mother try to smile. She watched the smile turn crooked and break up. She saw her close her eyes. She heard her. "I'm sorry." They looked at each other. "Mamma," said her mother. "That's what you called me. Mamma." End of chapter 4 and the airport.